Thank you both so much for taking the time today.
Thank
Our
you,
pleasure.
Tessa.
Thank you.
Listen, I love Stephen King and I didn't know this story. So I was like so captivated watching it. And then I ordered
Oh,
the book also.
Oh, good.
oh,
um,
great.
yeah, for you guys, I want to know, what do you think it is about this story that allows it to really translate into a series?
Well, I'll just say that when Stephen sent me the galleys about 6 years ago, I loved working with kids, which he said, "Do you like working with kids?" I said, "Yeah, I've done it a lot and I love it, but you got to find the right kids."
Yeah.
And that's the key. And we were very fortunate starting with Joe Freeman and Ben Barnes too, but he wasn't a kid, and the other kids in the group, because that's really the heart and soul of the show. But the other thing was the Parkland school shooting had just happened. And I was really struck watching those kids who survived that tragedy stand up and become this political force, that they stood up to the establishment, the politicians, everybody, and they said, "You know what? You all screwed up. We've got to fix this. We know how. Get out of our way." And I went, wow, there's the future. And they are right. We have screwed up. Look at the world we're in now. We still do it. Right. So that point for me became the touchstone once Ben and I got together to do it together, was the phrase, "Children shall inherit the earth, but first they have to save themselves."
Mm-hmm.
And so it feels like a very timely story, aside from being a hell of a thriller and very entertaining.
Yeah. Ben, for you, what do you think it is about this story that?
Yeah, look, I agree. I mean, I think that the ways I'm fascinated by the ways in which adults generally, and certainly in the show, seem to use kids for whatever they need. I mean, I'm very struck by how every politician on every side of every issue claims to be doing whatever they're doing for the kids, right? And protecting the kids. And it's all about the kids. And yet almost none of them ever ask the kids what they need or what they want or what they think. And I loved from the very beginning, I just loved that this story was about the kids and about the kids saving themselves. And it was very important. It was very important to Stephen. It was very important to Jack and me from the beginning, that we never lose the idea that, there isn't an action hero riding to the rescue who hears kids are being victimized and now, he's going to come in and save the day. It's about the kids having to realize this is a problem, this situation we're in, and we need to rely on ourselves and each other to get us out of it. And that is pretty magical, and a very timely, I think, message and theme for the show, about the kids having to fix the world that the rest of us have not, at the very least, not fixed.
Yeah, at the very least. Exactly.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, what does it mean to you guys I think like teenagers, kids could watch this and honestly be inspired to stand up for themselves. What does
I
that
oh
mean to you?
I'm so glad you said that, because I couldn't agree more. And I think that this show may have elements that are horrific, but it's not sadistic, and it's horrifying,
Yes.
but not, let's say, horror-ish in many ways.
Right. It's
And
a
I
thriller.
think, yeah, it's
Yeah.
a thriller. And I think that it's thrilling to watch these kids come together. And also, even Ben Barnes' character and what the writers have come up with, even though the seed of the wound that he is carrying from his past, which gets him to turn in his plane ticket and end up in this small little town, to just take a breather and find himself, because he knows he's off his track in life and he doesn't know where it's going to go. And so in many ways, it's through his antenna that's up, and what he hears from Annie in town and her very bizarre antenna connecting with, across the river, there's this place that there seems to be some darkness on the edge of town over there. It ain't what people say it is. And so all of that coming together, that Ben and the writers created, that wasn't in the book, based on the proximity of which we changed the institute to the town, and not playing them across country, I think made it. I lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry. So you know what? You can fix that part.
Yeah,
you can
you're
just
fine.
cut it.
Exactly. That's the best
Sorry.
part. Post-production.
All right, Ben, please carry on.
No, I love it. I mean, look, you know, your question, I think, is completely right on. I mean, you know, the premise of it being about teenagers being able to watch
Yes.
the show and you
That's
know,
it.
see themselves triumphing. I mean, you know, one of our touchstones in the writers' room was that it feels to us like this is a World War II POW film. I mean, it's, you know, The Great Escape or something, and the Steve McQueen and Charles Bronson just happen to be teenagers, but that's what we're making. And that, you know, we wanted to have that sort of ecstatic catharsis of, you know, turning the tables on this awful place and these awful people. And yeah, I mean, I think hopefully it is a message that resonates at the moment, or maybe tragically it's a message that really resonates the moment.
There's also, just speaking about the horrific villains in our show, brilliantly played by Mary Louise Parker, who walks that razor blade of charm and diabolical evil.
Mm-hmm.
But we find out is a true believer in their cause.
Yep.
And this is the way we save the world and have. And it just makes the story that much more complex, that the villains are villains, and none of us would condone what they've created and what they sacrifice. And the fact that they're full people, her father was, all of the above. I won't go into more details.
Yeah.
The fact is that only makes the whole tapestry that much more complex and I think compelling.
And resonates for us also because the real world seems to be full of villains who are certain they're not the villain.
Yes.
Right. Who have,
Exactly.
you know, some completely understandable justification for what they're doing. And imagine how much worse things would be if they weren't doing the awful things that they're doing. And that felt like a real opportunity for us to portray these villains, not as sort of mustache twirly arch kind of evil with a capital E, but as, you know, as people who really have, I believe or have convinced themselves that they're doing the right thing and that what they're doing is for the greater good.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you both so much for your time. This was so great. I loved this. I can't wait for next season of From. I have to tell you that, Jack. I'm so excited. And thank you guys so much for your time.
Well, we just started shooting that, and thank you for that.
And be excited for season 2 of the Institute.
Yes, the Institute.
Yes, of course.
We love that you love it. So spread the word. Thank you.
I will. Thank you. Can't wait for everyone to see it. Mama's Geeky. Thank you both so much for taking the time.
Hi, Tessa. Thanks for having us.
Oh my gosh, this is so good. I love Stephen King. So like I was already in, and this is one I hadn't read. But for you guys, had you read the book? Like, what were you excited about exploring with this world?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was, I read the book after I got the job, and it was seeing all of the things in the Institute. I was very excited to see what the studio would look like and where we would be for filming, I think, because I wasn't really thinking about anything else. It was just like, how's this going to look?
Yeah.
Because, you know, the performance will come later, you know, when you get the scripts, that's when you can work on that side of it. But when I initially read the book, it was more, what's this going to...
That's so interesting that you say that, because I remember so vividly, like, when I first read the scripts for like the Narnia films, like what will the sword look like?
Yeah.
What will the, you know, what will the, you know, this look like, and whatever. And you do think about those little details. And I remember even reading this, even though my character is not really involved with the Institute element, I remember thinking, I wonder what will be in the vending machine. Like, I you know, you do think about specifics like that and get excited about those little things. So that's so interesting you say that. I read the book between reading the script, one of the scripts, and being offered the job. And I read it very, very fast, just in case I didn't get the job. Because I didn't want a Stephen King story to be ruined by disappointment.
That's fair. What would you tease for this, for people who know nothing? Because like I said, I went into this not having read the book. And now I'm going to read it for sure. I already bought it. I'm so excited.
Right.
But what would you tease for people who literally know nothing about this story?
Well, I think you're going to need to strap yourself in because it's a lot of children going through things that are not very nice.
Yeah, some traumatic stuff for sure.
Yeah, so it's definitely a commitment, but I think it's also one of those things. I'm excited to see people's reactions because I think it's one of those things where you could just, even on a Monday night or whatever, curl up on the sofa at 8 o'clock with the family and watch an episode. You know, like it's one of those things that also is not only going to be a bit, oh god, I don't like that's uncomfortable or disturbing or whatever, but it's also a really fun thing because you're rooting for everybody to be okay, you know.
It's also a show you can watch in more than one way. You know, there is this very exciting kind of story about these kids. You just want them to be able to escape from this terrible place which they're being imprisoned in, and then there's also, you know, almost a separate story of my character Tim, who's this ex-police officer who's found himself kind of looking for peace in a chaotic world, really, and how watching it, wondering how these stories are going to merge and what they really mean, and is there any sort of subtext to what's you know, kind of happening in terms of these vulnerable kids fighting against this kind of big authoritarian system. I mean, I think Stephen King often speaks to, you know, the chaos of the world as well, through his stories, and wondering particularly how these two characters are going to connect and what's going to happen when they do, I think is like a real pull through the story too.
Yeah, absolutely. It does feel like two different stories for a while. You're like, okay, I'm into both of these, but like, when are they?
Yeah,
they gotta connect at some point.
You know what I mean?
That's why you keep watching.
Exactly. Ben, real quick before we wrap too, I have to tell you, I was devastated when Shadow and Bone was canceled. Like, absolutely devastated.
Good. It was a good show, and I love those stories, and I think sadly, you know, the best stories that Leigh Bardugo wrote, the Six of Crows and the Crooked Kingdom stories, I love those books, and I'm sad for the guys who were playing the Crow characters, because they really would have got to kind of expand on that world and those characters, and you know, my character was kind of tied up with a very neat bow in terms of his deserved demise, but you know, I think for everybody, I became very, very protective of that cast, and really kind of really rooting for them all in their own lives, but also as characters. And I wanted to see them kind of really thrive. Yeah. So I think, I would have liked to have watched the Six of Crows story. I love a heist.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, maybe, fingers crossed, someone picks it up eventually down the road. Who knows? Thank you guys so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much.